Ladies and gents, boys and girls, this is going to be a great episode of Think Fast because I don't have Varun. I have Mr. Amit Doshi in the house. Varun is going to hit me with his shoe when he's back.
Hey, he's having fun. I see him drinking wine, sitting in parks with Pooja. I'm sure he's okay. He'll
Seriously, dude.
survive missing an episode.
How many holidays has this man taken? Like,
He-
seriously.
Listen, this is what you get when you get to sell companies to Group M and then exit those companies completely. This is what your life is like.
Oh my God. One day, Amit, one day, you and I will also be in
Yes.
London sipping wine under some gigantic tree, using all our hard earned money and pissing it away on inflationary rates. But how have you been, man? All good in the hood?
All good, man. All good. It's been a couple of months. I think I was last on sometime in March. I think it was when Varun went for his
Yes.
previous trip.
Yeah.
So
Oh, he's always on holidays. I am like the only one who takes this seriously. Guys, can we negotiate rates on air? Can I get more of can I get more of the money allocation to
I think
myself? Because
I
I
think that's a
evidently
fair
take this
ask.
seriously. That's a
I
fair
think
ask.
that's a fair
Yeah.
ask.
So let's jump in, man. Lots of stories. I want to kick off with obviously the most disturbing news that came out of
Mhm.
what seems to be the most disturbing country these days, which is the United States of America. Jay Kotak was right. Everyone trolled him for his tweet. I don't know if you saw that.
I did not see his
You
tweet, but
didn't? Oh.
he's a smart guy. He's generally right about a lot of things.
Yeah, no, but he posted this tweet about how he had gone to Harvard University for his get together, and apparently all of America was falling apart. And he ended it by saying India works. He got called out for all of that. But he's right, man. America's falling apart. Roe v. Wade has been overturned. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that, man?
Uh. Well, I mean, it's insane. I can't believe that something like this is happening in a country which is
In
supposed to
2022.
be. Yeah. No, it's ludicrous, right? I mean, like, I can't. I just don't get it, right? I never
Yeah.
understood this like opposition in this kind of a fervent way to this
Mm.
particular issue. But also, I mean, like, the truth is that what it tells you, and I think this is going to be the theme that we're going to see throughout the rest of this episode, is you can't believe people. You just can't believe it, because three of these
Yeah.
supreme justices who basically voted against Roe v Wade right now, all of them during their confirmations had said that they are not, they consider it settled law,
Yep. Yep.
is the way that they had put it, right? So basically, yeah, can't believe people.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, for our listeners wondering why is Think Fast talking about, women's rights and abortions rights in America, while we're obviously a podcast focused on Indian audiences, I think it's safe to say that anything that happens in the US always finds a trickle down effect to
Mhm.
India. We saw it happen with the rise of Trump and obviously the rise of, all things Hindutva and just general minority oppression in India. And I mean,
Oh, we beat them. We
I
were
hope
first there. We were
we were
first
there
there.
first, but like it just all got amplified. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like misogynistic, racist behavior just became totally fine and
Yeah.
normal and not scoffed on, which it was before. So I wonder what the ramifications of this will be. But this is just really, really, really sad.
Right. So I mean, like, it's accepted practice in most of the world at this point in time. The U.S. is going to be like one of, I think, is it like 8 countries, 10 countries where it's this strictly
Yeah.
against it.
It is
So
wild. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. No, but it's great to see the protests, man. It's great to
Mhm.
see people go, without it. I don't know. I think there is something about scenarios like this where your hope is that democracy works.
Mhm.
You saw it kind of happen with Trump being kicked out within just 4 years, and Biden coming back. You've seen it happen in India as well. I mean, something like the CA/NRC, which was literally put on its tracks. There's a halt put on its tracks because of the amount of protests that broke out across India. You saw it happening with the farm bills. So I don't know, but as like frustrating as this may be, I do think these are one of those few occasions where you're also reminded that if people really stand up for something, democracy works.
I hope so. I'll be honest. In the U.S., I'm not. I'm a little skeptical about this. I think it's going to break down by state.
Hmm.
because it's the same. So it's actually not even the same, right? Larger percentages of populations are in favor of gun control than are in favor of abortion, and still nothing happens on that front, right? It's an
Yeah.
extraordinarily partisan issue. It's an issue that basically is an election killer for Republicans, right? If
Yeah.
you're a Republican and come out as anti-gun, you lose. If you're a
Yep.
Republican and come out as pro-abortion, I guess that's not the right word, but basically
Hmm.
pro-choice, you
Hmm.
lose, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's going to be tough, but at the same
Yeah.
time, it sucks.
Yeah, segueing into coming back to India, I know we're going to talk about this a little later, but Zomato has wrapped up its acquisition of Blinkit, and it announced the same, earlier today or late yesterday on Twitter. They had a nice long potha that they had, sort of published about why Blinkit and this, that, and the other. Honestly, M&As are like brutal for all parties combined, and if the media is to not be believed, I can only imagine, the back and forth that would have happened over the past couple of months. So I'm sure both Zomato and Blinkit are happy that it's done and dusted and everyone's moving forward from here. The other piece of news, obviously, is the Reserve Bank of India on Monday, 21st of June, directed the non-bank prepaid payment instruments, popularly known as PPIs, to not load their PPI instruments, wallets, and prepaid cards through credit lines. What the fuck does this mean, Amit? What does this mean?
I honestly, it took me a while to figure out what this meant. It really did, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I got a link. I went to that link. I tried to read it. It's PPI, it's NBFC, it's all these kinds of acronyms which mean nothing. Then I went and searched about this and I found a second link. The first link
Hmm.
was from, I think, Swarajya.com. The second link was from Economic Times. The third link
Hmm.
was from Business Standard. The fourth link is finally the one where I kind of got some sort of understanding of what's going on over here, because your story was kind enough to actually give you an example of what this really means with using real companies. And I mean, like, it's insane to me that this is the way that this is how you find out, that this is how you figure it out. We can talk. Do you want to just go into it right now, or do you want to talk
Yeah,
about
yeah.
this?
Jump in,
Yeah.
jump in.
So I mean, like, I think the idea itself makes some degree of sense, right? Basically,
Hmm.
what this thing all comes down to is the idea that you cannot use Paytm Postpay to fund Paytm Wallet,
Hmm.
right? And that makes a certain amount of sense, right?
Hmm.
Because it is on one side, these are regulated industries, right? Both the wallet side of things, depository is regulated, as well as the credit side of things is regulated, right?
Yeah.
And if you look at other parts of now, so if you look at how the banking industry functions or other industries function, these things are kept separate. You're not allowed to kind of mix these up, right? And so
Yeah.
I understand that parity of regulation needs to be there. Are we overregulated? Absolutely, 101%, right?
Hmm.
Should this be a regulation? I honestly don't have a strong opinion on that one way or the other, because I don't understand this well enough. I do
Yeah.
understand that it makes sense for there to be equal regulation, whether you are a quote unquote new age NBFC fintech or whether you are an old school bank, right?
Yeah.
The regulation should be at par. But the thing that really struck me about this more than anything else is how obtuse a thing this is, and how poor a job all of these publications did of explaining exactly what is going on over here. And I feel like I'm somewhat familiar with these issues. I'm not, like, super deep into them, but I get them, and I get them probably better than 95% of the audience reading this stuff, right? And it's just like, how can you write this in such a way that nobody understands what the hell you've written? So
Yeah. 100%. But I think obviously this has come as like a rude shock to a lot of BNPL players, because if you look at the way BNPLs are structured, there's usually no bank as an intermediary, right?
mhm,
So essentially the way BNPL players work is they'll source their credit from NBFCs. NBFC stands for non-banking financial company. And
right.
dear listeners, I'm not this smart. I literally had to Google this shit before we started recording. So just a quick clarification on all of this. And the problem with NBFCs is they don't have a direct affiliation with banks. So it's almost
Mhm,
like you're giving credit, but what's the underwriting instrument with which credits are given?
right.
Agree with Amit. Some amount of restrictions needed over here before we have some like crazy debacle happening, which ends up affecting the whole industry. But longer conversation on the future of credit in India, maybe on another episode. The next quick story is. Uber Technologies apparently explored options for selling its ride-hailing business within India itself. As we've seen, they've divested, from their business in China. They sold it to Didi. They also have sort of, rethunk their position in SCA, where they, sort of palmed off their business to Grab. So, you've seen Uber sort of, let loose of its control in, the eastern part of the world. And as ET reported, apparently they were also looking at, getting rid of their India entity. But who would buy it, Amit? Who would buy it? Ola
I
doesn't have the
don't.
money.
Ola doesn't have the money. I don't know that there is a buyer for sure for in that
Hmm.
sense, right? The Indian cab industry does not have like a single big player who, besides Uber, who would be in a position to acquire it. And it's also, I mean, like it's very clear that it's a very, very tricky business to run, right? I mean, like
Yeah.
your the one of the key things in Uber in the US or other markets, right, is the relationship between Uber and their drivers, right,
Hmm. Hmm.
or their partners, right, and it's a clearly contractual relationship. It's not an employment relationship,
Yeah.
whereas in India the drivers, or not just the drivers, even the way the reporting is done around this stuff, right, and we come back to the media in that sense, right? But I mean, like there is a sense that there is a sense that it's an employment relationship rather than
Hmm.
a driver relation, rather than a contractual relationship, right? And Uber doesn't work as an employment relationship, right? I mean, like the
Yeah.
way it works is if it is independent contractors, because for taxation reasons, for payroll reasons, for all of that kind of stuff, right? Because the amount of money that the average Uber driver would make does not really make sense in an employment
Yeah.
sense. It only makes sense as a contractual sense, but then again, that's an average number. Average means that there's much higher variance up and down, right? So
Yep.
uh, I'll give you my own example in one way, right? Like I mean, like so I used Uber for 5 years exclusively till the pandemic happened. I
Hmm.
started using. So basically, when I started IVM in 2015, I had given my car to an uncle who needed it, and I just never bothered getting a new one because the office was 40 minutes away. And so I'm like,
Hmm.
I don't want to drive. I'd rather just get into an Uber. I'll get into Uber. I'll go to office. I'll come back. It was 5 minutes away each. Like I get a car at home in 5 minutes. I get a car in office in 5 minutes. Wherever else you'd go, I go mostly to places which are in like high frequency areas, right? So I mean, like
Yeah.
I used to get a car quickly. Uh, Once the pandemic kind of happened, at that point in time, it started taking 30, 40, 50 minutes for a car to
Yeah.
come pick me up, right? At which point I was like, okay, I can't do this anymore. I bought a car. I was lucky enough to be able to afford to buy a car, but I think that Uber had a lot of people like me who were using them, even though they could
Hmm.
afford to buy a car, but simply because the convenience was great. And that convenience has gone out the window now at this point.
Yeah.
Every time you
Yeah.
call one, somebody is going to ask you, okay, how are you going to pay? I don't, to be honest, I blamed Uber more for that than anything else. Uber should have submitted that information to a driver. I'd rather
Hmm.
wait for 5 minutes for somebody to say yes on the app than
Yeah.
wait, have somebody say yes, then call me and then cancel, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
there were service problems and all of that. So, given all that, who's going to buy them? I don't know that there is who wants to be in that business? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, one could argue that parts of the tech could be used for logistics, delivery, etc. The way it's sort of morphed itself out in the US, but doesn't seem like they have the liquidity to necessarily invest in building that up over here. But before we make this podcast about Uber and its never-ending issues, let's quickly run
You're
through
right.
the other headlines. So the good news is a couple of fundraisers were announced. We're going to talk about. Fundraisers and M&As were announced. We're going to talk about Cashify. We're not going to talk about Cashify later, but just give them a shout out over here. They raised 90 million. Chios raised 53 million. Pine Labs has announced its acquisition of Setu with a deal value reported at in between 7 to 100 million, though they themselves have not commented on shit. So please don't believe random numbers that you read online. Unfortunately, Netflix has laid off hundreds of employees. And I don't know if you're seeing this, but like every second post on my LinkedIn, over the past week has been of some layoffs cut somewhere or the other.
It's tough times, right? I mean, like all the businesses which are funded from like external capital at this point in time, it's a tough time right now. So I mean, like, I think you're going to see more consolidation, like Setu and Pine Labs, right? It makes sense for
Yeah.
consolidation in that kind of sense. I think you're going. It's tough times. I mean, like, let's. I don't think that it's as bad as some people are making it out to be. I mean, like, I've heard things like 30-year winter and shit like that, and I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
that's a bit excessive. But it is going to be. It's going to be. It's going to be rough for a bit.
Yeah, yeah. It continues to be rough for EVs with, not just Ola, but everyone from Tata Nexon to Toyota, their EVs catching fire. In other news, Headspace has a chief music officer, and it is none other than the legendary John Legend, which was super interesting, like this interplay of creator and company. And we're going to be talking about creators later on. Last couple of quick stories before we get into our break, ladies and gents, is Mondelez is apparently buying energy bar maker Cliff Bar for 3 billion, which is good news, I suppose, for the whole truth, because you've got a benchmark for what an exit could potentially look like. I think other interesting piece of news is Telegram apparently has topped 700 million users. They're launching a premium tier thingamajig. And last but not the least, Niti Aayog has a new CEO, Mr. Amitabh Kant, who is very popular and very controversial on Twitter, has stepped down. And there is Mr. Param Iyer, who has now been appointed in his place. So I think that rounds up the top stories for the week. Anything that you want to add over here?
No, I think this was a fair. I mean, like, yeah, I think this more than people would. I thought the one thing that you were going to talk about, which you did, which was interesting, was sports consumption in urban India.
Ooh, yes,
I
read that
I thought
out.
that yeah, I thought that was really interesting, right? That basically that urban Indians prefer watching women's sports over men's. Very like counterintuitive, right? I mean, like in the sense
Yeah.
that this is I'm amazed by it. It's great. It's a really really positive kind of this, right? But at the same time, I was surprised.
Narrative violation. And with that, guys, we will take a quick break. We're already 17 minutes in. We'll take a quick break and be back with our stories of the day.
Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome to another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Think Fast, Varun and Suchita discussed Revlon filing for bankruptcy and Sony Liv's success story. On Cyrus Says, Cyrus was not there with us this week because he's vacationing in Spain. Ayushi Sriram, Antriksh and Abbas, however, discuss airline etiquette and gifts they're given to their exes. On The Wire Talks, author Aparna Piramal Raje tells Siddharth how she coped with bipolar disorder. On Press Decode, Sarah Bagda and Prafula take a look at the porn industry. And on Big Talks About Tiny Humans, Devi Shobha and Meghna discuss 4 major parenting styles. Just a reminder to everybody, the IVM merchandise is now available. You can go to the IVM Podcast website and click on the shop tab. Check out our first collection of t-shirts. Also, do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I'd like to remind you all that it is really, really helpful for us when you do recommend this show or any of our other shows to a friend. Word of mouth is great for us, and it's really a great way for us to grow our audience and have more people for you to discuss your podcast consumptions with. Also, don't forget to rate us on any platform you're listening on, and you can also check us out on YouTube at ivmpodcast.com/YouTube. We have a list of the YouTube channels we are on. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Capgemini, Intel vPro, and Intel Future But Now Wonderful. Thank you so much for making this possible.
And we're back with the OG, Mr. Amit Doshi is in the house, while Varun is, enjoying
Sipping
his.
wine. I mean, like, I can't believe I saw like 4 pictures of him sipping wine.
Seriously, dude, that better help his erectile dysfunction. But in any case, Varun's my friend, guys. I'm allowed to say these things. But kicking off with the first story that we guys are going to cover is this excellent piece that, guys, I highly encourage you to read. It's a story written in Mint by none other than Shephali Bhatt. Which is essentially called, influencing is not easy money. And I don't know if you remember this, Amit, but there was this whole, hoopla. Even we covered it on ThinkFast, but YouTube had released a report saying that its creative ecosystem contributed to over 6,800 crores to the
Mm-hmm.
Indian economy and supported, close to about 7 lakh equivalent full-time jobs. And all these numbers were obviously touted. There was screaming and shouting of, wow, creator economy is the future, etc., etc. But obviously what Shefali does masterfully in this particular article is she gives you numbers, right?
Mhm.
And a big fact that she alludes to is actually a chunk of the money is being made by the top 1 to 2% creators or categories. What are your first thoughts on this particular article and story?
This is not surprising to me. When it comes to media, it's always the top 5% of media stuff that comes out there. It's a hit
Hmm.
driven business. Media is a hit driven business, right? Uh, to give our own example in some way, right? On IVM, we do from our top two shows probably are 45% of our traffic, right? So two shows, 45% of our traffic.
Wow, that's
Uh,
mind blowing.
yeah, no, so I mean, like, it's a hit driven business.
Hmm.
That's the nature of how media works. And so I'm not at all surprised by this, right? I mean, like when you go on YouTube and look at random videos, you see the 20 million views on a particular video, but you
Yeah,
also go to the random video which has 435 views or 28 views.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
mean, yeah,
yeah.
I mean, like this, the Pollyanna-ish kind of idea that hey, media is going to be democratized and anybody can be a creator and this and that.
Hmm.
That's not really the way the world works, right? The best of now it opens up opportunities for different kinds of areas, right? Like in this case, so a music company is one of the biggest earners anyway, but there are independent musicians who have come up through YouTube, who have
Yeah.
become popular, not just through YouTube, through other social media, right? The guy who Shantanu something, the guy who does like a bunch of Instagram real music things and stuff like that. He's become very
Hmm.
popular. There
Yeah.
are a bunch
Yeah.
of people like that, right, who do this kind of stuff. And so I think that you will find a few creators who make a lot of who get really
Money.
popular. Bhuvan Bam became so popular on Instagram,
Yeah.
right? He was already
Yeah.
somewhat funny, became so popular on Instagram. So you'll find some who get this, but it's always going to be hit driven. There will be the
Yeah.
occasional surprise. There'll be this, but yeah, I think media is hit driven.
I think the one interesting thing that came up as a part of this article was, what you can't run away from, which even Kunal Shah talks about, is India is a DAO farm, right? A daily
Oh,
active user farm.
yeah,
And if you look at the CPMs that, an Indian eyeball slash impression would get versus, what happens in the US. So, for example, in the US, creators can literally make money off of only YouTube ads.
yeah,
In India, and I think it was a part of this article, but Kunal Kamra, I think, had mentioned how one of his videos had like over a million views, and the amount he earned from it was only 15,000.
yeah.
So in India, the truth that continues to exist is that most amount of the money for these creators is actually made through advertisements, promoted content, product integrations, etc., etc. It's not being driven by pure play cash out on
Hmm.
CPMs, impressions, reach, etc., delivered by content,
It doesn't.
which exactly. And I mean, I'm sure you've seen that with IVM as well,
Yeah.
where the delta really, and even with podcasting at large, programmatic hasn't kicked off the way anyone thought it would,
S-
or even at all.
So, well, we don't use programmatic because the programmatic people offer us 150 rupee CPMs. Not
Yeah.
interested in playing that game. Podcasting doesn't operate at a scale where 150 rupee CPM leads to meaningful monetization, right?
Yeah.
So we're looking at it as all host-read integrations or content integrations or
Mm.
show sponsorships or larger associations and things like that, because we do think that it's a different kind of value stream right here compared
Yeah.
to YouTube. You can, if you're doing a 2 minute if you're doing a 2 minute 3 minute video, what integration can you do, right?
Hmm.
That becomes a challenge. But on the podcasting space, you can absolutely do a more complicated integration, right? We were doing on Cyrus for the last month, we had like this Jupiter quiz, right, that led
Hmm.
into a break, right? So I
Hmm.
mean, like our next sponsor on Cyrus is a pet brand, and we're going to be doing like a lot of stuff with pets and stuff like that as part of it,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So I mean, like, that is the way that's the way that we're going to do it, because pure CPM is not going to cut it. We don't even
Yeah.
monetize YouTube. It's not worth it.
Yeah, yeah, and I think I think that's why, like, even media strategy, for example, becomes very interesting because, like you said, folks like Bhuvan Bam or any of these other guys, their audiences may have exploded on YouTube, but they've all figured out other ways to monetize,
Yeah.
right? The other ways could be creating shows for, OTT platforms.
Mhm.
The other ways could be, for example, what Tanmay Bhatt does, where doesn't he have like a advertising agency or something of his own?
Yeah, he
And
does.
he worked with Cred on
Mhm.
all of their advertising campaigns, and I'm sure he also worked on the small case ads. So I
Mhm.
think, if you're a creator, I think all of these platforms are great ways to build your brand. But if you're counting on these platforms to actually become cash cows for yourself, then you'll be left struggling. And I think that the tragedy of this is, two things. If you look at even this, where the audience for which the money is skewed, it is your urban creator,
It is.
right? It is your like top 1-2% creator that's talking in English, that's or English, creating content for largely an urban audience. They're
Mhm.
the ones that are really piling on to any parts of this monetization, not necessarily your rural tier 3 plus creators that
Mhm.
platforms like TikTok, for example, empowered.
Yeah, no, 100%. Again, hit driven, right, in that sense. And also the ad market in India, most brands, right? I mean, like there are two types of advertisers. One is who is looking for reach, and when you're looking for reach, then you want to go to the biggest possible kinds of numbers, right? But
Yeah,
then when you're playing the reach game, you're by definition going to be looking for the lowest possible CPMs,
yeah.
because it is also going to be a low, I don't call it a low, it kind of is. It's a low quality touch point, right? You're not really kind of engaging deeply with the customer there. These are your outdoor hoardings on highways. These are radio ads on All India Radio. You're not really deeply touch point. It's not really a deep kind of uh,
Integration,
integration, or it's not even like when
communication,
yeah,
engagement,
the
whatever.
communication is
Yeah,
not very this, right? When
yeah.
you're looking at people who do YouTube and they do integrations of brands on YouTube, right?
Hmm.
Those are much more tightly done, and those are always, almost always done by the brands who are looking for basically metro tier 1 tier 2 audiences. They don't care beyond that, right? Like, I mean, like, and so yeah, it's going to be hard to kind of see this thing like scale out in all these different ways that people thought they were going to.
Yep, good story, Shephali. Over to you, my friend.
Okay, so the one that I wanted to talk a little bit about was, I wanted to dive a little bit into the thing that we mentioned in the intro, which was the Blinkit being acquired by Zomato.
Hmm.
Uh, I think it's a really interesting this, right? And again, I think that one of the things that that we spoke about before we were recording, right, was just how bad some of the reporting around some of this stuff is, right? When they
Oh,
start
terrible.
looking at sorry.
Terrible reporting.
Yeah, it just, I mean, like when you start looking at the kinds of stories that people were throwing around the quick service delivery space, when you're looking at it was just like, wow. And then when we saw what happened at the time, and the post that came out from I think it was the CFO of Zomato who put out the post, right? But when you saw what the kinds of stuff, the things that they were talking about, it was like, oh, okay, all right, Blinkit actually makes a tremendous amount of sense for them, right?
Hmm.
It's a business which basically covers a lot of the problems they have, right? One of the problems Zomato has is not enough deliveries per driver. Okay, now we all of a sudden open up a 16-hour workday instead of what was essentially like a 6-hour workday, right? So there's a lot more of this. It's a lot more predictable when you're working out of the same number, when you're working out a limited number of dark stores,
Skews.
if
Yeah,
you will, right?
yeah.
Um, Even from the packaging perspective, one of the biggest problems that Zomato has is people complaining on social media about their packaging being fucked up or whatever that may be.
Hmm.
Though they should
Hmm.
blame the restaurant, not Zomato or Swiggy, but it's still one of the biggest things that you see, that it's where the PR nightmares come from. In this
Hmm.
case, it's all factory packed goods. So, I mean, like, there's almost nothing that's going to, very little things can go wrong in that sense, right? So, I mean, like, it just feels like it's a much fundamentally stronger business. Also, I'll say this, right? Zomato and Swiggy have been able to bully restaurant owners into the discounting thing, right? Because it's like, oh,
Hmm.
you must do it, otherwise you'll not get orders. You can bully Unilever. You can bully Procter and Gamble. You can't
Hmm.
bully the people who are basically your suppliers when
Yeah,
it comes to the grocery business. Right.
yeah.
And so, given that, you're going to see a fundamentally much stronger business, which is not based on discounting.
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
They might discount to some degree, maybe the delivery charges or what have you, but that's the extent of discounting you're going to see, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Other than
Just
that, you're
consumer
discounting.
adoption.
Yeah, and so it's a fundamentally much stronger business. So I think it's a great acquisition for them. Your thoughts?
So, we've spoken about quick commerce, we've spoken about Zomato Blinkit multiple times on the podcast. And I think so, where I agree with you is all the points that you mentioned, right? Grocery, like big basket is called basket for a reason. It's because you don't
Hmm.
buy individual items, you buy in multiples, right? So, you go to the grocery store with a list, and that's just generally the cycle of grocery, which makes everything, like you said, much better from a average order value perspective.
Yeah.
And in India, historically, if you look at any company that's done well vis-a-vis e-com, they've been high AOV businesses, right? And
Yeah.
AOVs need to be at 1,200 rupees plus for the maths, all the way at the bottom to genuinely and generally add up. Obviously, the second advantage, like you said, is unlike their restaurant delivery business or cloud kitchen or their delivery business at large, it's not like I need to go to multiple places, and that's what Dunzo's sort of Achilles heel was, right?
Mhm.
The use case was only X to Y and X to Y to Z, in between the
Right.
rider, the place that they were picking shit up from, and then the customer that they were delivering stuff to. But over here, it's the flow is just a rider which who chances I will already be at a warehouse, to the consumer. So
Hub
all of
and
your
spoke.
costs. Exactly. So literally it's like all of your costs, whether it's your delivery cost, your fuel cost, your rider cost, all of that just starts making sense.
Hmm.
I think the challenge that they're likely to face is, now obviously Zomato has tremendous pressure to become profitable,
Hmm.
because their counterparts in the US have also been thrashed, whether it's DoorDash or any of these other guys, through this particular winter that's gone around. And not only is their stock down, pretty much anyone, even Nika, who was the sort of like
Hmm.
fairy child of the IPO
Yeah.
markets, even they're
I was
significantly
pissed
down.
off I couldn't buy Nika during the IPO. I got it at like
But
much
now
lower
you
rates now.
can.
I did. I
Yeah,
got it at much lower rate now.
yeah, yeah. But I think the question to answer is, is the business going to be quick commerce or will it be grocery? And my bet is that this general hoopla and hype around quick commerce, which is 10-minute delivery, that's the definition of quick commerce. I think that's going to fade away after a period of time, right? So will Blinkit continue being quick commerce, or will it, become a grocery delivery service? I think that's a question that will hopefully be addressed through strategy, deployment, etc., of the next couple of months, years, whatever. Which begs the question: why did Blinkit even rebrand itself from Grofers to Blinkit? Grofers was actually a fairly strong name in the
Mhm.
grocery delivery business. So why those changes took place, again, we'll find out, because there are obviously things that are happening there that we don't know. But
Mhm.
I think the biggest question, which I'd love your answer to, that these guys need to answer, is why would Blinkit be outside of Zomato? Why, like Instamart, is Blinkit not a feature, and why does it warrant to be a product in isolation?
I don't think it should be. I think it should be. I think it should be part of the same thing.
Hmm.
Because again, you get the benefit of the installed base of
Same
Zomato,
consumer.
which is much
Yeah.
higher than the installed base of Blinkit. You get the, like. I mean, like at this point in time, I use Instamart more than I use than I use Zomato. I basically Swiggy gives me both things, right? So basically, my phone, when I'm looking to do this, it goes to Swiggy first just by habit.
Hmm.
Uh, so I think I think it's something that eventually, unless there are significant reasons which might emerge later, I think it is something that will eventually happen. Uh,
Yeah.
again, I don't know the business as well as these people do, obviously, right? So I mean, like they must have the reasoning, but in my mind, it just makes sense. Like I'm not one to believe in that one app to rule them all in
Yeah.
general.
Super apps.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, but in this case, I
But this
feel
is just
like
like complementary use cases.
yeah, exactly. And I think you want to share your driver pool base, right?
Yeah.
Your delivery pool. You want to share that between the two services.
Yeah.
So I think it makes sense eventually to kind of have it like that. But again, I don't know why they haven't done it.
Yeah, yeah. No, but I mean, congratulations to Blinkit and Zomato, because I know they would have probably faced like a lot of heat, given the amount of like random stories and gossip and fodder and this, that, and the other that was coming up as a lead up, to the acquisition. So that it's happened safe and sound, and hopefully not too many employees are affected by it. That's good news, right? That's good news.
It
Uh,
is.
yeah, switching gears to story number three, which is Facebook is changing its algorithm to take on TikTok, reportedly, allegedly. Apparently, Facebook employees were recently given a new directive, which was obviously
Mhm.
leaked like everything else coming out of Meta, to make the app's feed more like, TikTok. Of course, this has been in the works for a while. I'm pretty sure Facebook at some point in time would have wanted to acquire ByteDance, or like build something like TikTok. Obviously Instagram launched Reels.
Reels. Yeah,
So
yeah.
but this really is, you know to a layperson, this may read as simply as, oh, Facebook's going to try a new feature on its feed. But isn't it like a moment in like internet history where, the past 15 years of the internet have been about social graph, but
Yeah.
now it's almost like, the movement is shifting to like, interest graphs, or best content, quote unquote, graphs. So what are your 2 cents on this, man?
I think so. Honestly, I mean, like, might make me sound like an old fart, but I want to know what my friends are doing. I could give a flying fuck what other people are doing. I mean, I really do. I just like I don't like the thing that I get out of Facebook, right? Is that it shows me my friends' kids' pictures. It shows me when people I know go on vacation, right?
Hmm.
It shows me, it shows me which of my friends are have turned into right wing nut jobs, right? This is what Facebook does for me. Uh, I like I mean, like, why can't there be two things? Why can't I have, like, a social graph which is people I know, and why
Yeah.
can't I have like a content thing which is just throwing shit at me from everywhere, right? I don't
Hmm.
understand why Facebook is making this change. I know why they're doing it, right? I get the logic and all of that, but I
Yeah.
kind of I'm disappointed by it because I like the fact Facebook became usable again over the last year. I mean, like, honestly, before that, it used to do so much. Like, all of us got pushed into following a whole bunch of brand pages, and Facebook became unusable for about three,
Yeah.
4 years in the middle. The last year or so, I've been like, again, it's not like I go to Facebook like multiple times a day or something like that, but it's become back. It's come back to, like, telling me about what my friends are doing, and I like that.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
I think obviously, one big thing that's prompting all of these decisions is just the amount of like time spent on TikTok, which is unreal.
yeah,
For example, TikTok's downloads were 20% higher than Facebook's and
mhm.
21% higher than Instagram's. And During the first
there,
three
there
months of this
is
year,
there's
e-
some shady shit there, right? Because TikTok counts the replay. So TikTok autoplays stuff multiple times, right? So or rather, it just autoplays the same reel over and over again. Wow, I'm calling it a reel. The same TikTok over and over again, right?
yeah,
But they do that, right? And so they count that twice, or they count that thrice, if it just keeps playing over and over.
yeah.
So there's some numerical chicanery over there.
Yeah, I mean, but to be fair, bro, that numerical,
Oh yeah,
Lollapalooza
Facebook.
thingamajig, Facebook is like the king of it all.
Facebook's
Like,
the king
remember
of it. It's fair.
the way they described video views was
8 seconds.
basically like I saw it for 1.5 seconds, and it's counted as a view. So I think all of these guys are like mafias in a way of like data manipulation, especially online. So none of us really know, what is happening
I
behind the
agree with
scenes.
that.
Uh, but I mean, there's no doubt the amount of adoption that TikTok's seen, and also if you look at the user base, right? TikTok has been able to find relevance in that Gen Z user base,
Mhm.
which, let's be honest, Instagram has not.
Yeah.
Instagram is still a very like millennial oriented platform. And Facebook, I mean, it's interesting to know that you still use the platform, but I haven't like seen it literally in the past six
I
odd
went
years.
back, so I didn't go for it for the longest time, right? I had the account, I
Hmm,
was just there. I didn't go there for the longest time. And about a year
yeah.
ago, for some reason, I had to sign into something, and I went back there, and I'm like, hey, this is different now. It's all my friend shit again. And a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
I mean, like, the truth is, Suchita, you and I are a lot more tech forward. We read all this news, we
Hmm.
know, and
Hmm.
this stuff reinforces, right? When you hear, oh, Facebook's traffic is cratering, and then we're like, ah, fuck it, screw Facebook, it's on the way down.
Hmm.
We start going
Hmm.
more and more, but there are still a lot of people who use
No doubt.
Facebook as first, right? As their
Yeah,
first
yeah,
thing, they think of Facebook as the internet. There are a lot of people who still do that. So
yeah.
I was really surprised by how many people there were that were really that
Uploading
were
stuff regularly.
uploading stuff, pictures and stuff like that, like 20 picture albums of, like,
Hmm.
vacations, and, like, one of my cousin's husbands put up, like, something on his golf trip where he had gone to, so he had gone to Augusta to watch the Masters, and he had put up, like, all pictures over there, and they were like, fucking, like, this is cool shit to see. So I mean, like,
Yeah, yeah.
and so it kind of pulled me back in a little bit, right? Again, I've no patience with, like, yeah, it's an ad heavy product more than I would like,
Hmm.
but at the
Hmm.
same time, outside of the ads, they got rid of all the other brand stuff, right? It used to be that that you'd follow some, like, random brand channels, and that used to kind of uh completely dominate your feed. It's gone back all friend stuff. So now I'm
Interesting.
disappointing. Yeah, now I'm disappointed
Time
that
to
that's going
open
away.
Facebook again and Mr. Zuckerberg, listen to our bud Amit. He is disappointed. Yeah, don't become another TikTok clone because I think your point is right. They need to figure out their identity on the internet before
Yeah.
becoming a Me Too. I want to add one small thing over here before we take a quick break, which is who was here before everyone else?
Or
Pinterest.
could Pinterest?
Pinterest
Okay.
was like the first to say that bring people together not based on who their friends are, and it's not like one is bad and the other is good.
Oh
But if you
yeah,
look
yeah,
at
yeah.
Pinterest is literally based on commonality of
Interests.
interest.
Yeah.
Ideas. They've categorically said that they're the ideas factory of the world, and
Hmm.
and actually talking about Pinterest on the next episode of Think Fast could be fairly interesting. But before we get to our next story, let's take a quick break and be back. And we're back, ladies and gents. And Amit, you're going to school me about something to do with telco, which I have nothing, which goes like way above my head, guys. Amit tried explaining this to me before our conversation started, and I looked totally perplexed. So, Amit, give our listeners the TLDR of the story.
Sure. Okay, so what's happened is that Cisco has acquired a telco license. Now, India has, and this is really interesting in many ways, right? So, India has always had this really kind of very deep distinction between what voice over IP, as in, like, talking over the internet. So, what we're doing on StreamYard right now, what we do on Zoom, the WhatsApp call, Skype, this is all VoIP, voice over IP.
Hmm.
And that's always been very strictly segregated from your PSTN phone numbers, right? So your
Hmm.
mobile networks, your landline networks, these are PSTN based networks, right?
Hmm.
These two things have been kept completely apart. And the government of India, the TRAI, if you will, right? They have been extremely aggressive in policing any kind of bridging that would happen between this was a big illegal business for the longest time, where people would run these kinds of fake telephone exchanges, if you will. You would call that telephone exchange, they would conference you into a VoIP server, and then you could call abroad. And this at a time when Indian calling rates outside were 20, 30 rupees a minute, and this would charge you like a buck a minute or something like that. People made mad amounts of money doing this kind of
Hmm.
thing. Now, what's happened over here is that Cisco, by getting the telco license, is now the first company that's in a position to bridge this gap. And I think Zoom is coming after it. They also want to try and get a telco license as well. But Cisco is the first company that's going to be able to bridge this gap. If you look at the Zoom call invitations and things like that you get right now, right, what you will see is you will see a list of phone numbers that you can call in with,
Hmm.
right? And the all of those numbers, none of them are Indian. The reason they're not Indian is because you're not allowed to create a bridge from PSTN network into VoIP, right?
Hmm.
This hopefully allows WebEx to start doing Indian phone number call in. And I think that this is like, I mean, like, the existing telcos are fighting this right now, and part of the reason is that there is a degree of rent seeking over here.
Hmm.
I'll give you an example. I have an uncle who passed away last year, but when he would get a Zoom link, he
Hmm.
would call America, because he's like, I don't want to, I don't want, he's like, he was an anti-smartphone person, right? He's like, I don't want
Hmm.
this WhatsApp nonsense on my phone, right?
Hmm.
So he basically only had a phone, and so he
Hmm.
would call the US and then log into a Zoom link via that. That's insane, right? I mean, like, he was spending whatever that 3 4 5 rupees a minute it is right now to be
That is
able to,
wild.
yeah, to do an hour long teleconference on via Zoom. So I mean, like, the now this is a very very late correction that's come, because this has been a problem since the 90s, when
Hmm.
I remember my brother had sent my mom what was called there was a brand called Vonage, and
Hmm.
Vonage used to give you a hardware phone which you could plug into your router directly, right? And so then my brother would have an American phone number that he could call, and my mom could pick up the phone, because trying to get my mom to use Skype in the 90s and early 2000s, that was not really on the cards at that time, right?
Yeah.
But he used to do that, or sorry, they used to talk to each other using the Vonage phone. So this has been a problem forever, and the fact that it's finally being addressed at a
Hmm.
point where it's probably not as needed as it was 20 years ago, but at least it's finally being
Yeah.
addressed.
Yeah.
So
That's what my question was going to be, which is like, what is this? What is even the need to address it? Because, your uncle, rest in peace, is a, you know what I mean? Like, I wonder what the volume of these, of folks who,
I
will
don't know,
spend five
but
bucks on a call.
I think that, so again, I think that the fact that you can bridge PSTN and VoIP is just important in and of itself,
Hmm.
right? So let me give you another use case. Today, if you want to set up a call center for a Indian business, you must
Hmm.
set that call center up in India. But we all know that the call center business, India has basically moved out of the call center business. India used to be big on call centers, and there
Yeah.
are still some. I'm not saying that there aren't, but the bulk of call center setups are now happening in other parts of the world where the specialization is becoming a deeper specialization, the costs are lower, etc. Indian companies cannot take advantage of this today,
Yeah.
because you are not allowed to create a PSTN to VoIP bridge. The only way you can take advantage of this is say, hey, call me via WhatsApp or call me via Zoom, right?
Got it.
But you can't make a phone call from your mobile phone to a call center and have that terminate outside of India,
Hmm.
right? And this again, if this goes away, and again, it's not really gone away, because Cisco had to get a telco license, right?
Got it.
So
Yeah.
Cisco had to get a telco license to be able to participate in the PSTN network. So it's not really gone away, but it's a step in a direction that I think
In the
is.
right direction.
As you know, I am not big on over regulating things. I believe that too much regulation is really, really destructive for the Indian economy. And we
Yeah.
have too much regulation in almost every aspect of our being. So, I mean, like, if this is a way to kind of loosen up things and get it
Yeah.
so that there is a way to kind of move this stuff forward, I think that's a net positive. But
Mm-hmm.
it's late. It's really, 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 really late in the day. This shit should have happened in like 2000.
Yeah, this sounds very, uh, you know, primitive almost. You know what I mean? You're just like,
It
why
is.
is this happening right now? But shout out to the Ken for covering the story.
Yeah.
Pleasantly surprised by, reading more than startup gossip on the Ken. But good story, man.
Yeah. No, very interesting story too. I mean, it's such a fascinating space, right? I mean, like, and it's such a regulatory black hole in
Yeah,
that
yeah,
sense that
yeah.
it should not have been there ever. But
Hence a number of limited players in this overall space.
yeah.
But cutting to my last story for today is, and this one's going to be a short one, but the creator economy apparently is serious business. This was a story on the cap table, which sort of, spoke about how in the last 6 months alone, almost every VC from, Axel to Elevation, Sequoia, Nexus, and more, all of them have, made their own bets in all things creator economy, right?
Mhm.
I think the interesting thing about the bets that have been made is they haven't been B2C bets. So, for
Mhm.
example, they haven't been bets in consumer platforms or marketplaces that have creators at one end, consumers or brands at the other. But this really has been in the more like infrastructure layers of, of development of all things creator economy. Now, obviously, one big one thesis for this space is creators have been struggling with audience monetization, which we spoke
Mhm.
about earlier today. So just about 1 to 2% of the top creators get paid the most, and a lot of the companies that you're seeing are trying to problem solve for this monetization of a larger base. Now, without going into names, because there were 2 to 3 names that this article alluded to, prima facie, do you think there is an opportunity in building B2B tools plus for creators? What do you think the thing is there?
It, there, I think there is an opportunity, but again, I wonder if these are like VC businesses are looking at 100x, 200x possible returns, right? And I don't know if that degree of possibility exists over here.
Yeah.
There is definitely a need for this stuff. We work with creators, as you know, a lot of different kinds of folks, and people who are not generally used to doing this kind of work, right? I mean, like,
Hmm.
we work with a lot of entrepreneurs who do podcasts, or a lot of consultants, or people who are not typical creators, if you will, right? And there is definitely a challenge when it comes to some of the business aspects that need to be done. People don't know how to create an invoice,
Yeah.
because if you're it's not part of your this, you don't know how to do it, right? uh, Whether or not you need to be GST compliant is something that people are not always aware of.
Hmm.
How TDS works is something that there is an issue. So these are the accounting parts of things.
Hmm.
Uh, from the scheduling parts of things, also there are often challenges. So is there a opportunity for tools of this nature to be there? Absolutely. But I think a lot of the tools that are being mentioned in this case are tools which are geared more towards marketing,
Yeah.
and that feels a little that feels a little bit like somebody sitting in the middle, and because most platforms are available for marketing just themselves, right? But this feels a little like there's somebody sitting in the middle creating quote unquote middleware. So I'm not sure
Hmm.
that is the same kind of this. There are definitely need for tools, but I don't know if there's this.
Yeah, I think I think the one thing that sort of kind of disagree with you on is there has to be a way to authenticate creator data, right? Because the problem with Instagram is unless a creator is literally sitting and taking screenshots of everything, and even Instagram, I'm sure you guys have seen Instagram's backend, it hardly has
It's
any
terrible.
qualifiable information, right? It's just
It's
age.
terrible.
Can you imagine how much that company is worth and how little data a creator gets even for themselves, right, to improve their
It's
content?
the most frustrating thing about that large platform, that I mean, like, your data is awful.
Yeah. Yeah. Facebook, and I mean, Facebook still improved, but Instagram is still a total black hole. And this is just IG. Like, imagine how bad things are on Twitter, Pinterest, and other quote unquote creator, YouTube also, and other creator focused platforms.
YouTube
So
is
I
good. YouTube's good. YouTube, when it comes to the data they give you, YouTube actually is, I think, the gold standard of what there is right now, in that sense, right? If you're a creator on that.
like Google, it's very exhaustive. So
Yeah.
you can get as much as you want to, slice and dice the data. So for
Y-
example, I think it works for companies like yours and ours that have enough people to make sense of the data. But if
right.
you were a creator yourself, right, and hypothetically speaking, you have a team of one or two, making sense of any of that information is
That's
impossible,
fair.
because I mean, imagine someone who doesn't have a data science background, right? How do you analyze what kind of content leads to the best performance? What is the, what I mean?
Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying, Sushita, but I also think that, honestly, that's life, right? I mean, like, in the sense that uh, organizations with multiple people available to do stuff
Hmm.
have the opportunity, basically are going to be able to do more with things than a single person. That's true across the board, right? I don't think
And
that. Yeah.
hence the opportunity of how do you simplify, how do you make it easy for creators and brands that may genuinely want to spend on creators but may not
Okay, you put
necessarily
me.
have all the data
Yeah.
cohorts that they need in order to make that choice, right? So
No,
really,
you flip me. Yeah, I agree.
how do you democratize, yay, but how do you how do you democratize information and data availability so that there's transparency at both ends, right? The brands end that may be willing to spend on creators, and at the creators end who may genuinely want to get better at what they do,
Yeah.
and need the right nudges or pieces of information in order to make those decisions. So I think there is an opportunity because uh, in the world of SaaS, right? Like there are a lot of Indian companies that have, I don't know if it's an Indian company or not, but for example, like a friend of mine was talking to me about this company called Gallery 5 that
Okay.
helps make sense of creator data, right? Again, just authenticate what a creator may or may not be telling you. So I think on the SaaS side, there is a lot that can be done, especially with the amount of money being thrown on creators.
Mm.
And I think like the clever taps of the world, this will be a enterprise led category.
Mm.
Like this will be a category that I can imagine the HULs, the PNGs, the JNJs, the Mondeleses who spend a shit ton of money on creators. I can imagine them wanting to spend money on these tools to make more sense of this information and then drive better decision making.
So,
I
but
don't think jump in.
no, no. So, don't you think part of the problem is the kind of access that the platforms themselves provide to this stuff? Because I know multiple people who have tried to create social dashboards, right? In the
Hmm.
sense of trying to do, trying to make sense of this stuff, right? But it's impossible to get the data out of Instagram to do this stuff, right?
Yeah, so I think one is, obviously, how much you can build on top of Instagram's API. Even I am not, fully sure.
Mm.
And how, these tools sort of become data collectors, I'm not fully
Yeah.
sure. But I do think the one opportunity over here is just brands inputting their own data.
Mm.
So for example, like if you could create a repository of, okay, XYZ brand spend XYZ on, creator X, and this was the ROI that they saw, because a lot of these are now happening in more informal conversations, like you and me talking about a creator saying, okay, did this person drive results? But if there was a way to really bring more of this information together through either like a ledger system, record keeping, or something like that, the same way, for example, companies like, for instance, Adfluence and all these other influencer management
Mhm.
companies, right, that have tools. So the point that I'm getting to is there'll always be an operational push where you will have to have that fleet on street that collects informations about these creators, inputs it into a central sort of like data warehouse, updates that information ever so often. But
Mm.
the point that I was making was, I think there's an opportunity in data transparency and using data to make better marketing decisions, just
Mm.
because of the amount of money being spent um, on creators and influencers to drive business goals. And the truth is, they do drive business goals depending on what the goal is, but they do drive business goals. I think the thing that I'll contest, which was written in this article, is tools that help creators, tools that basically help creators, for the lack of a better term, collect payment.
Mm.
So for example, like think of it as, hypothetically speaking, like a razor pay link, right?
Right.
Which a creator can use to collect payments, because I think stuff like that works if you are I think stuff like that works if you're also a demand generator, like how
Yeah.
Instagram is. Like Instagram helps generate demands for creators, but I
Mm.
think, or like what Pratilipi does, right? You guys help generate demand for creators, and then parts
Right.
that demand can be monetized by the creators. But I think India is notorious for the mid to long tail never necessarily seeing the light of day as far as distribution and discovery is concerned. So
Mm.
that would be my 2 cents on the second part, which is helping creators collect payments slash monetize themselves better.
Okay. No, I agree with you. I think that that's always it's what we were speaking about earlier as well, right? That there, in the YouTube story context, right? That there are India, or not just India, most markets, most places, most of, when we talk about creator-driven economy, we're essentially talking about media, right?
Hmm.
Creators are not the creators are not like they're not starting e-commerce stores. They
Or
might, but that's
platforms
a
of their own.
subsidiary.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a part of this, right? There, but it's functionally media. right?
Hmm.
Whether it is commentary, whether it is dancing or
Hmm.
whatever the hell is there out there, right? But it's functioning media, and media is, again, it's hit driven, right? So you're always going to have a large number of the creators who are going to be struggling. I mean, like, we've heard the
Yeah.
legendary stories of the struggling actors and the struggling writers and directors and all of that stuff in films. And I mean, like, you're going to see the same kind of struggles with for similar distributions, right, in terms of
Yeah.
percentages of populations over here. And yeah, I mean, like, that's the nature, I think, of how consumption on this stuff will occur. Yeah, is there a lot more? There is a lot more, but there are also a lot more creators.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. And with that, we're going to take a break, ladies and gents, and be back with audience questions and recommendations for the week. See you on the other side. Okay, guys, we are back. And before we get into our recommendations, we're going to quickly answer listener questions. So, Amit, this is rapid fire. We need to be rapid and have fire.
Okay.
Question number one has come from our lovely listener whose name is Anand. And, he wanted to ask us about our thoughts on Gen Z and mental health, especially at work. He says it's great that everyone talks about it now and is more aware, but there is a lot more understanding needed on all sides about how every work challenge isn't necessarily a mental health issue. As an older millennial, Amit, what is your
I'm not a millennial. I'm a Gen X.
your oh my god,
Yeah, I'm old as shit.
boomer in the house?
Yes,
Uh,
and I believe what he. I agree with what he said. I think that, yeah, we
hmm,
have to be more sensitive to mental health than we were when I first got into working. But
yeah,
having said that, some of the stuff that comes across to me as mental health issues is like, dude, grow a spine, or do that, grow a spine.
yeah.
I mean, like, some of it's not really mental health. Some of it is just like, if you want to work in the real world is not going to bow down to you. You're going to have to be a little tougher than you're being here. But yeah, so
Yeah,
I agree.
yeah. One is that I think the second is also, trivializing of mental health, because I think one big problem is things like, bipolar, ADD, depression. They're actual issues, man. As
Yeah.
someone who has seen, very close friends go
Hmm.
through literally hell and back, right? Comparing that to having a bad day at work is not the same thing. So
At
I think
all.
somewhere, yeah, I think somewhere the problem is, it's like, like when your hand is fractured, like there is a reason why it's called a fracture. I
Yeah.
think there has to be like a definition put into things like clinical depression, or like actually having mental health issues, because somewhere there is like trivialization of this, and I think that's
Yeah.
that's a larger problem, which is by trivializing the shit, you're taking away from the agony that most people who suffer from these issues actually face. So
Yeah.
I
No,
think that'll
so
be my
actually, I know it's rapid fire, but I talk to people my age, right? I have a lot of friends who are my age, and the like I have a very close friend of mine, really smart guy, really good guy, okay, but he has, like, we were having this conversation over drinks a couple of weeks ago, and his he runs a large company, and his
hmm,
this was that, while I'm interviewing you, you mentioned the word mental health and you're out. It's
hmm,
automatic disqualification. Now, he will never
hmm,
say this in public, he will never say this to anybody else, right? But the
yeah,
problem that he has is one of trivialization that you're mentioning there, right? And
hmm,
also appropriateness of context,
yeah,
right? While mental health matters and everybody wants to be sensitive to mental health issues, the fact that you bring it up in an interview means that you're setting up excuses for yourself before you even start the job,
yeah, yeah,
is the
yeah,
way that he looks at it. And the fact is that he has been brought to this because he has a large workforce of Gen Z, and this shit comes up all the time, and he's frustrated by it because he's like, this is not mental health. This is
hmm,
you having a problem with your boss telling you to get your shit done.
hmm. Are you talking about Varun?
Varun unfortunately does not get into the Gen X space yet.
Okay, guys, next question is Harshit Taneja has sent a question asking us what is entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs according to you, and what do you think it takes to be an entrepreneur? Amit, sir, what does it take to be an
I have the
entrepreneur?
quickest answer ever over here, as opposed to every other answer I've given on this podcast. Just get on and do it.
Just
Just do
say
it.
that again.
Just
Just
do
do
it.
it.
Just do it. I
Just
mean,
like
like,
Nike. Just
just
do
like
it.
Nike, just do it. That all it takes to be an entrepreneur is doing it.
Yeah, I think, one small thing that I'd add over here is, entrepreneurship doesn't always mean running your own company, but it means having an entrepreneurial mindset. And an entrepreneurial mindset is, uh, in my opinion, having the discipline, rigor, and self awareness in the category and the space that you're in.
Hmm.
I think that to me is entrepreneurship, right? Understand the category you're in and have the discipline, self awareness, and the persistence to actually deliver on it. Wow, so meta. I was actually going to say tequila, but I thought that sounds smart for a change. Okay, last question from Nikki Gupta, who asks us I want to know more about the entire discount fad. Raising capital has been glorified. It's become a woke loan that everyone wants. So, what are your thoughts on this?
Woke loan. That's an interesting word. I think it depends on the business. I mean, I think it depends on what you're doing. My first business, I didn't raise anything. I put in 5 lakh rupees. My partner put in 5 lakh rupees, and we went. Right.
Hmm.
I mean, like, it depends on what kind of business you're running. The second business, or this IVM podcast, I didn't do without raising money first.
Hmm.
Right. So
Hmm.
it entirely depends on what kind of business you're looking to run. Some of them require raising of funds because they are going to be capital intensive. You're going to have to put money in ahead of the market, especially if you're trying to create a market. Right. If you're trying to build a market, you absolutely are going to need to raise money to do it. But if you're like, you shouldn't raise money to, like, get a Subway franchise or to run a restaurant of some nature. You should not raise money to do, like, if you want to get into, what's the Reddit thing, importing door handles from China. If that's the business you want to get into, you should not. Then you should not raise capital. If you want
Yeah.
to build something like what Suchita has done with LBB, then you need to raise money. You can't get away without raising money there, because you're building a market. You have to build, like, parts of it before it's going to monetize.
Yeah, yeah. And my quick answer to that would be, exactly what Amit said. But I agree with the point that Nikki made, which is, somewhere it's not even about entrepreneurs. I think somewhere employees need to get with the agenda that raising money is not always equal to solving all problems, right?
Uh-huh.
Just because you have like 30, 40, $50 million in the bank doesn't mean that that money is going to solve all your problems, or that the best example of the best built business are ones that have raised a shit ton of money. So I think somewhere that booth that unfortunately our media has, and because of that it also trickles down into entrepreneurs. I mean, I've been victim of this when I was younger, and employees as well. Is it's not the be all and end all of entrepreneurship. There's much more
Yeah.
to that. Your recommendation of the week?
I really enjoyed the movie Hustle on Netflix. Adam
Great
Sandler
movie.
and yeah, really fun. A bunch of different basketball guys. It's about a coach who finds a unexpected player and then gets him into the NBA. I really enjoyed it. I'm a basketball fan, so maybe it was maybe it's like it was. I'm a basketball fan and an Adam Sandler fan, so it was like this movie was specifically made for me. But I did
Yeah.
enjoy it a lot.
Yeah, yeah. My recommendation of the week is okay, I am obsessed with all things Mark Twain Awards. In fact,
Okay,
if you guys haven't seen Dave Chappelle's Mark Twain Award ceremony, you have to watch it. You will die laughing.
I
But
thought John
basically,
Stewart won.
yeah, John Stewart won it this year. Dave Chappelle won
Okay,
it 2 years ago.
okay,
And my recommendation, thank you, Amit. My recommendation was going to be John Stewart's award ceremony
oh,
for the Mark Twain Award this year. Guys, you
sorry.
have to see it. If you love comedy and if you love comics, you will die laughing. Steve Carell's tribute slash homage to Jon Stewart is so fucking funny. I peed in my pants like thrice while watching it. So for all of you like comedy nuts, and also for those of you who like me are Jon Stewart stans, you must see this. It's up on YouTube. Go watch all of it and have a good weekend. And with that, we have a show. We have a show.
Yes, we do.
Thanks for joining us, Amit, and we will see you soon.
Thank you so much.